Hi there. This news came out about a week before the House of the Dragon Season 2 premiere, so I wasn't able to cover it at the time. There was just so much going on. But I don't want to fall through the cracks. That George R.R. Martin made a blog post update in which he said that the proposed Game of Thrones prequel pitch on Nymeria and the 10,000 ships of the Rhoynar is still very much active. And it's actually under a new writer. That was the cause of the delay, that we hadn't heard about it for some time, which makes this the third, not second, but third attempt to pitch this as a prequel series. That a couple of weeks ago, I already made a video on this. It came up when, in an unrelated interview, veteran screenwriter Brian Helgeland briefly talked about this, and he just said in one paragraph, "Oh yeah, I wrote a pitch for a Nymeria prequel, but it got rejected." Casual news outlets then recirculated this without context, and then going through the online telephone game, it became Nymeria has been cancelled, without even Googling what they were talking about. So I had to explain, Brian Helgeland made the first pitch for a Nymeria prequel as part of the first wave of prequel pitches announced way back in 2017. The War of the Five Pitches. And his pitch was rejected by 2018. That this was rejected years ago. And the old leadership at HBO picked The Long Night. Blood Moon turned out to be really bad, an unmitigated disaster that blew $35 million on an offensively bad pilot. All of that. But after that, AT&T bought out HBO's parent company, Time Warner, so in early 2021 we got leaks about a new second round of prequel pitches under AT&T. Three things: Dunk and Egg, which they're making now, The 9 Voyages of Young Corlys the Sea Snake, and Nymeria. So this is early 2021. We had heard there is a second, starting over from scratch attempt at a prequel pitch on Nymeria, written by screenwriter Amanda Siegel. That was the last we heard of it in 2021. Now, a couple of months ago, back in December, I think, Martin made another blog update saying that Young Corlys, the Sea Snake show, had been shifted to animation for practical reasons. As he explained pretty succinctly, and the fan channels generally agreed with, that yeah, like, in practical terms, he visits a different port every week, so you'd have to build a new full set every week. Just the costs would be astronomical. Even a Nymeria show, while there's lots of dragons and monsters in it, there's relatively fewer locations in it compared to, we're going to make Karth for all of one episode, we're going to make Yeti for all of one episode. The cost-benefit just didn't match up to that. It makes more sense to treat it as animation. I mean, good quality animation. Martin has said the animation level for the multiple proposed animated projects, he compared them to Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots in terms of visual quality. I'm a fan of animation as an art form. That you can do serious drama with animation. So, yeah, we all generally said the same thing, that, yeah, animation would probably work better for that. And as I pointed out in my main video on this, if Nymeria was being shifted to animation, he very much would have said it when Corlys was being shifted to animation. Almost as certain, though, not as much, a little less, but, if this was cancelled, he usually just tells us when things are cancelled. That I said the most likely scenario, there's no chance it's been shifted to animation, because he would have said it the same time as the other one. Might have been cancelled, might not. Well, it turns out that, Occam's razor, the most probable explanation, logical, is what happened. That the reason he wasn't talking about it and it was delayed is because they started over again under a third writer. So I'm not exactly thrilled about a delay, but compared to we thought it was canceled, no, we just restarted under a new writer. That's fine. This new writer is playwright Eboni Booth. Recent Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Eboni Booth. And that would make this the first Westeros, World of Westeros show, it's set in Essos, show with a woman of color lead, written by the head showrunner is a woman of color. So, look, just as a screw you to Benioff and Weiss going, we don't need to be trained or have a full staff of writers or anything. Just given how offensively bad they wrote Dorne and stuff, how you owe us better than that. Separate question, though, should you be worried? Is it normal for a pitch to be rebooted from scratch not once, but twice? Does this not bode well for the chances Eboni Booth's third attempt has? Well, House of the Dragon actually got in on the third pitch itself. That's what they did. Ryan Condal's take on House of the Dragon was actually the third attempt at making it, the third writer starting over from scratch. While the idea of a Dance of the Dragons show was one of the ideas proposed in the original War of the Five Pitches in 2017, the original pitch was by writer Carly Ray, who had major creative differences with George R. R. Martin about when to start it. She wanted to dive into the actual war, sort of like the Princess and the Queen novella. That imagine if the series premiere was episode 9 of what became season 1, of just, yep, Viserys is dead, and then this coup, and then Vhagar, pretty much at the end credits. And Martin was saying, no, season 1 should focus on the Rogue Prince novella covering the reign of Viserys, and explaining why did these rival factions form, the dynamic between them, their backstory of how Rhaenyra became heir ahead of Daemon, ultimately married him, the growing rivalry between the Blacks and the Greens, Rhaenyra and Alicent's factions. We needed that. Eventually, Carly Ray left, and they started over again from scratch with Brian Cogman. Though even Cogman himself said, I am so busy working on Game of Thrones Season 8 prep that I do not even have time to put in what I consider my best writing for a pitch. And given that he's basically an ink cartridge salesman who faked his way into writing with no formal training because he just is Benioff's friend, it's better that we didn't have him. And just the stench of all of those Benioff and Weiss loyalists. But even by his own admission, he said, I didn't have even time to make a good pitch by my standards, so he was gone. And Cogman liked to lie to people. He'd go, I'm one of the 5 pitches. He was the 6th pitch. He wasn't one of the 5 pitches. He was a replacement batter for Carly Ray, essentially. But then they started over from scratch under Ryan Condal. And his third pitch managed to get in because he already knew George R. R. Martin was working hand in hand with him, did it the way he wanted to by starting earlier with the Rogue Prince stuff. So yeah, sometimes TV and movies just go through multiple pitches, multiple sets of writers for the same basic idea, but then creative differences. I mean, I'm not saying Marvel these days with... It hurts my heart how much of a fiasco Blade is becoming with Mahershala Ali at the MCU is actually quite a disaster, it turns out. But no, you go through multiple writers, multiple pitches sometimes, and I'd rather they get it right than just rush through the first one they did. That's what happened with Blood Moon. They picked the one that sounded, oh great, we need one right now, let's pick one instead of vetting it first. So yeah, House of the Dragon itself got in on the third pitch, so Eboni Booth, no problem, okay, she's starting over with the third pitch. Final section here, though. I'm sorry I'm racing this off. I wish I had already made a video on this, but just this is the update that turns out it's because Eboni Booth restarted it. How far along in development is Eboni Booth's new attempt at a Nymeria prequel? Well, there was a point in late 2022, around the time House of the Dragon was coming out, when we heard that all 3 of the second wave prequel pitches, Duncan Egg, Young Corlys, and Amanda Siegel's Nymeria, had advanced from we ordered a pitch phase to the we ordered a pilot script phase. So they had advanced from pitch to pilot script. But I need to stress this, ordering a pilot script is not the same thing as green-lighting the pilot script to film a pilot. That's a separate step altogether. See, when I say pitch, that's an officially defined and formatted document, which is like 100 pages, double-spaced, giving an overview of the series as a whole and what you intend to do with it. And if the studio likes this pitch, they will then, step 2 is we order a pilot script. And they take time to write it, iron it out, and then step 3, they might order a pilot to be filmed. Sometimes they actually skip filming the pilot because it's really good, that, Ryan Condal said he fully thought he'd have to film a pilot, then House of the Dragon Season 1, and instead, based on that he had a pretty good pilot script already, they ordered it straight to series without a pilot. That and the fact that Blood Moon had just blown up in HBO's faces and they needed to start filming a new season immediately because they were running out of time. But also it was a well-received pilot script. George R. R. Martin himself was very enthusiastic about it, had his vote of approval, unlike the other things. So they ultimately didn't need to film a pilot for that. So I don't know if Nymeria will need to film a pilot or be greenlit straight to series. I mean, like Young Corlys is animation now, but they don't do pilots for animation. And Dunk and Egg, I don't think Dunk and Egg had a pilot. I think it's short, it's 6 episodes, they didn't really need a pilot for that. There was some confusion on this, though, with some people said, oh, Eboni Booth is, the way Martin phrased it is, she's working on the pilot. Some people said that must mean it's been greenlit to film. If they greenlight something to film, you'll know they've greenlit something to film. What he meant was she is working on the pilot script, and I'll take it that it's been ordered to film a pilot. When I hear about it, I'll update that. But just reading through his announcement here, again, this is best case scenario of what we hadn't heard about Nymeria in a long time. He wasn't mentioning it as shifted to animated. He usually tells us when things are canceled that Nymeria was delayed because they changed writers. Good, it's not canceled. Just reading through Martin's description, just to end this with fanboying out, just the details he gives and just screenshotting his announcement here, that he actually mentions not just the 10,000 ships of the Rhoynar refugee fleet, but he said, we're trying to iron out working in the budget constraints of, quote, 300 dragons and even the giant turtles. That we're still trying to figure out how we're going to pay for 10,000 ships, 300 dragons, and those giant turtles. That after the Rhoynar's combined army under Garin the Great, they're kind of like the Greek city-states. They're independent, but they rally together, they smash Valeria's armies in the free cities and start besieging Volantis. And they have water wizards, whereas Valeria has fire magic. That they're besieging Volantis itself. This is the first time in centuries the Valyrians have known fear. So instead of just expeditionary fleets and stuff, they send everything they have. They fire everything. They throw everything they have from the capital itself at the Rhoynar, because they're losing in the colonies, and they send an army of a full 300 Valyrian dragons. It's like the biggest battle in history. It's a 250,000-man army of Rhoynar and water wizards, and the siege getting broken by 300 dragons. And I wonder if they have the budget to fully show that or parts of it. But it is a major part of the story. It's how the Rhoynar were defeated, so it is a plot point. You'd show bits of it at least. But what makes me fanboy out is actually the mention of the giant turtles. Because you could cut those entirely. They're putting them in for fun. That, the idea is the Rhoynar worship the goddess of the Rhoyne River, the main river in western Essos between most of the free cities. And this river is like this huge biome unto itself. It's like the Mississippi or something. And there are giant turtles in the Rhoyne River, river turtles the size of elephants, that they consider sacred avatars of their god. And you don't see them that much because they're underwater turtles, that they hide from people, that rarely will they surface, so they're there, but they usually avoid humans. And I just love how that fits with Martin's low fantasy world, that they're not shooting ice beams at each other or something, not something really magic, but they're about as fantastical as mammoths and direwolves in Westeros, right? That this is like some early Pliocene megafauna that has survived into a later period from the Pleistocene. So yeah, there were, big turtles back in, a couple of million years ago, that it's a turtle the size of an elephant. And you actually see them in the main novels in Book 5 when Tyrion is traveling down the Rhoyne River by boat. The TV show cut all of this. I'm annoyed. There's a point where one of these turtles surfaces next to the boat, and he sees it and goes, it's as big as the boat. We're going to need a bigger boat. But that this isn't just, like a sailor's tale or something. Within the book, within Tyrion's POV, he sees one of these things. So with his own eyes, he confirms there are turtles the size of a boat, the size of an elephant. And they're called the Old Man of the River, the giant turtles, and just, I'm smiling that they're doing the right thing here, that they didn't need to put the giant turtles in, but we love the giant turtles. And Martin himself, he said if he had a sigil, it would be a turtle, because he couldn't, have pets as a kid except for turtles, so that's, on his hat, he always has the turtle sigil. So you gotta have the turtles. So just we saying we're working out the budget concerns of this, but yeah, we're doing this. We're probably trying to do it live action. I will say I've speculated in other videos. I'm sorry I couldn't edit this better. I'm racing this out because I'm doing episode 3 tonight. There is some chance they might want to do these as a movie trilogy instead of a TV series. And I'd be okay with that. That, well, the budget is big enough, and it's actiony enough that you're fighting dinosaurs, that it would merit doing that. And I also hope that what they do with Nymeria is show that, like, work in the origin of the Targaryens. Something as simple as they said they were a minor family, one of the faction that was promoted up in the conquests, that see some Targaryen general who doesn't have a dragon, and they go, oh, he's the hero of the battle, he was the first over the wall of their encampment, and they reward him by going, then we, in reward for your heroic service, we grant you this dragon egg and elevate you to Dragon Lord status, young Targaryen, and that's how they became Dragon Lords or something, because they're part of the faction that were the warlords from the conquests. Not that it would be a big part of the show, I'm saying like a cameo of just, and here's the origin of the Targaryens gaining Dragon Lord status, because we knew they weren't one of the more powerful ones. So maybe do this as live action movies, maybe do this as a TV show. I think there's 3 acts to it. I think it's a clear, Act 1 is the destruction of the Rhoynar city-states, the defeat by Valyria. Act 2 is fighting dinosaurs in Sothorios with their refugee fleet. Sothorios is like fantasy Africa. Maybe go to the Summer Isles in that season. And then Act 3 is when they go to Dorne and have to make various political alliances to unify it. So this isn't going to be a full flagship show the way House of the Dragon was, but near term, like who knows if 2 years from now we could actually be starting to get casting news on this thing. Keep in mind, they are also concurrently working on a Targaryen conquest thing by Mattson Tomlin, which we do have strong reason to believe that it's like a 5-season thing, but what would be season 1 on the conquest itself, they said maybe you should turn that into a movie, and yeah, that's a good idea. The conquest is short and action-packed, and then like go through season 5 as the fall of Maegor. It would cover that whole stretch through the Sons of the Dragon era, but the first one might be a backdoor pilot theatrical movie. Maybe they'll do the same thing with Nymeria, maybe not, we'll have to see, but currently, we have 2 current live-action shows. House of the Dragon, Duncan Egg is filming now. Pilot scripts that are actively being worked on are Mattson Tomlin's Targaryen Conquest and Eboni Booth's Nymeria project, which is just restarted. And they said there's 3 animated projects. There were 5 at one point. Corlys is the 5th one. 2 got shelved. So the remaining ones are now Corlys, the Yeti one, and another one we don't know about, which I suspect is an anthology similar to the Histories and Lore, but at better quality. So 2 current shows, 2 potential live-action things in writing stages, 3 potential cartoon ideas. So 2 years from now, because it takes time to build up a cinematic universe, and they only started really doing this right after the writer's strike ended, because they didn't know if season 1 of House of the Dragon would be a hit, then it was. They started planning out the cinematic universe, then as soon as they did, the strike hit. This will build momentum like starting a diesel engine, but 2 years from now, we're looking at a full cinematic universe. These are the first in-line shows, and good news for Nymeria, not just for Nymeria and the Rhoynar, it also shows Valyria and stuff, and that it's the world beyond just Westeros.